Thank you for coming. My name is Daniel. I'm the founder of TAM Integration. We offer psychedelic integration circles, services, meditation classes, and like tonight. Is the volume not high enough?
No, it's playing.
I don't think the light's on.
Let's play with those mics.
The mic's not on?
There it is.
Good. Do we have a sound engineer?
We need it a little louder back here.
Do you know how this works?
I'll have your top right now.
Please.
Yeah.
So,
We'll turn it up for you.
warm round, a large round of applause for our sound engineer, Paige.
Thanks.
Thank you so much.
A warm round of applause for our host, C.
Yeah, brother.
And this is a little bit of a big deal. This is a little bit bittersweet. C has hosted all of our conversations up until this point for the past year. We've been coming here to talk about psychedelics and therapy, psychedelics and spirituality, psychedelics and celebration. And C has been so gracious, and he's made such delicious beverages, and he's lost his lease. Oh. So get it while you can.
Yeah.
Right? Enjoy the gifts that he brings while you can.
Thank you.
And it's been wonderful.
You've been so wonderful.
Thank
Love
you.
this crew so much. You guys are awesome.
Playing will take 10
What's
minutes.
that?
Is there a place he's moving?
You're
He's been
representing
very shy about where
play,
he's going.
the child
It
playing.
might be in the neighborhood or it might be in Oahu.
Oh.
We'll keep you posted. So we're very excited. You know, April, as you probably know, is a little bit of a psychedelic holiday, right? Do we know this?
No,
Is this news to anybody?
I didn't know it. It's new to me.
It's news to you. So this weekend is Bicycle Day. Have you heard of Bicycle Day?
Is every time it gets up?
It's the worldwide, throughout all of the three worlds.
Oh.
Since beginningless time until endless time. And Bicycle Day was the first intentional LST trip, right, which took place on bicycle.
Oh, wow.
It was
And
First
unintentional.
accidental one was today,
what's that?
and the accidental one was today.
And the accidental one was today.
That was the
Right.
bicycle one.
So here we are having an accidental journey with the Tea Faerie, which I'm very excited about. Her poetry and her columns on Erowid have been very inspiring and enlightening and just joy-producing for me, and I know many others. I know that many people come to the circles looking for more information, and 9 times out of 10, I'm saying, you got to look at Erowid. You got to look at Erowid. And so I'm sending everybody to Erowid, and now we have a little piece of Erowid here with us. But before we get to the ferry, we have a very special guest who's going to warm us up with a little bit of the magic that only he can do. So, yes, and we've got monkeys. And so if we could get some applause for Rak Razam.
Thank you, Daniel, and thank you, honoured guests. And yes, we are here to celebrate tonight, and this is a very special occasion. So we're in the Bay Area, we're in San Francisco, and as some of you may or may not know, there's this very powerful thing called a Psychedelic Renaissance, which is blossoming all across the world and has been brought through by many organizations like MAPS, the Multidisciplinary Association of Psychedelic Studies, and they're testing the potentials of these chemicals we call psychedelics, these things which open the mind. So as Daniel prompted us before, this began a long time ago, April 16, 1943, in those dark days of World War II, the alchemist, Saint Albert of Hoffman, was experimenting with lysergic acid and all its different compounds and derivatives and all the different iterations. He'd first synthesized it in 1938, looking for a uterine, chemical that could help with childbirth and things like that. And it did something unexpected. So this meticulous chemist, who was trained in the rigorous old school styles, thank you, my assistant, put this compound aside in 1938 and didn't look back at it again until one day in 1943 he had what is in German called like a Morgenholt. It means a strange presentiment, like a bolt from the blue, the aha moment, and something tickled his fancy. And he was like, LSD. I might go back and look at that one, right? He tested it on animals back in 38, nothing untoward had happened. So he brought it out again in the lab and was experimenting, and apparently, according to what is now psychedelic mythology, apparently a small amount of it was absorbed onto his skin or somehow, and he had the world's first LSD trip. It wasn't intentional, but it was a divine providence. And, he didn't really know what had happened, but he went home, and then the 3 days later, it was the weekend, so on the Monday he came back and he dosed himself with what he thought was a very small amount in the micrograms, more or less 250. And he experimented, he started to feel strange, he started to feel very unusual, and he asked his assistant if he would accompany him and bicycle home to his home in Basel, Switzerland. And so that first intentional trip started to come on. I've taken that bicycle trip in 2006. I went to Basel, Switzerland to celebrate the 100th birthday of Albert Hofmann, who was alive and well and was speaking at the symposium on LSD, his problem child. And I took that opportunity to retrace that bicycle step along the banks of the river and through the streets of Basel, sans acid. And, I really wonder what he thought, but it was this trip into the history books that ushered in this problem child, as he called it, this beautiful alchemical gift, which has the potential to open the doors of perception and reveal either heaven or hell according to where you're at. Because LSD can be an ego diminisher, and it can be scary to let go of that ego. But when we open up, when we open up and we remember, we reconnect to the game of life. And hopefully we can remember how to play the game. Which is where the Tea Faerie comes in.
I know how to play the game.
Of course you do. How you play the game is the game. So there's many cultures around the world which offer spiritual truths and metaphors and ideological scaffolding. There's modern sciences, there's psychedelic journey work, there's shamanic pathways. All of them posit that we're in something, that we're embedded in an organism, a matrix. We're embedded in this simulation that is running and that is playing whether we like it or not. And it's your choice whether you be a non-player character or a playing character. Playing. Because it's fun to play the game. And so, I can't remember when I first met Tea Faerie. It might have been Maps 2013 in the car park.
That's your movie.
Having fun. Is that my movie? Right. But some of the first playful moments we had were, of course, where we're all from in the future, Burning Man, the Burning Man of the Heart. And she showed me her magic, her belief. In Christian mythology or in their mapping, they say angels never touch the ground because they're too pure. They have to remain above the worldly things. They can't be brought down. Feel careful. I feel the Tea Faerie has a feather from that flock, in that she and I played together in the playa dust with our pure hearts, with our inner 7-year-olds, and we remembered each other, and we remembered how good it is to play the game, how to be aware that you're in the game, and how to let it play you. She has a lot of magic, and she will share it with you. But listen with an open heart. Trust the process. Let the magic unfold. And let her story become your story. Because all is one. So without any further ado, I call and invoke this mysterious magical creature, the Mother Matrix most manifestrix, the Tea Faerie.
That's not me. That's not myself.
You didn't announce that I was the sidekick.
Alright.
Oh.
What's your name again?
Angelina.
Angelina.
Well, Q.
Special thanks to my guru Luna and her sidekick Angelina.
One, two, three, testify. Is this thing on?
Yep, it's on. You can unwrap it if you want.
Unwrap it.
If you want.
What does that mean?
You can take it off its stick.
Oh. I've lost the monkeys. Luna, I need the monkeys put back for me, will you? Like a chain? Okay.
How's that?
Thanks for coming.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Unwrap it some more.
Yeah, get rid of the stick.
All right.
We want to see you.
Nope. Haha, all right. We're so clever here. We're clever monkeys. Yeah. All right, we're free of sticks.
Once more with feeling.
So you just came up from the Transpersonal Psychology Conference, and you gave a talk on simulation theory.
Yeah, well, myself and Rak Razam and a couple of our other erstwhile compatriots from super teams of mine, not to say past, I never think of any of my super teams as being past tense, but ones that I've worked with a while ago. And we did a panel about simulation theory. And then a couple of days later, we did a YouTube show about simulation theory on a show called Simulation.
Big takeaways?
Big takeaways. I mean, the thing is that we can't tell from here. I think that the word simulation is a little bit misleading because it suggests that it's a fake universe. And real is a word that we made up in here to mean this. And it's that. And I don't think that it's inside of a computer in the naive sense any more than we would say that it's inside of a punch card machine. It could be divine, sentient, holographic, quantum, extra dimensional, just plain magical. But it's a system that processes information or I'll eat a bug. And you can pick that bug. So I feel like that's the language around information processing is sort of a source of fertile and flexible and aesthetically satisfying metaphors for what it could be. You talk about, you're getting a download, or, the gnosis sort of comes down like a torrent download. Whenever any one node of it gets enough of the message, it starts broadcasting pieces of it to the nodes around it, for instance.
Or we feel upgraded.
Or we feel, yeah, exactly. You feel like you got an upgrade, or you feel like, some of these Easter egg levels that you find inside of this thing, there's cartoon land in there, and where's the data? Where the heck is this? Is it on the DNA? Is it in the cloud? I had a ayahuasca experience that really drove this home for me a few years ago, and it was like, I'm scanning you for patches, cookies, updates, viruses, We have found some malware that, like a dragon mama, is, don't you know you're using an insentient browser that doesn't give a shit about you? And it wasn't suggesting, like, for instance, DMT was evil, but it's more like it's, I'm 45, so I remember the early internet. Like, you remember, like, 90s bad porn pop-up land? Where it's like, click on me, click on me, click on me, click on me, which one?
Wait, you don't get that anymore?
Well, no, my blockers are good, baby. I mean, I say I don't look at sketchy sites, but that it was that the sites that I was visiting were leaving cookies all over my shit. And, you know, again, that's a metaphor. It's a better one. And I think that, you know, like 50 years ago, for instance, or 100 years ago, you couldn't say it's like a fractal. You couldn't say it's like a hologram. You couldn't say it's like a massively multiplayer game. And we don't know what we're not going to be able to say yet. We don't know what in 50 years they'll say, oh gosh, in 2020, you couldn't say it's like this. And that will be a yet better metaphor because it's becoming more self-similar. It's becoming more on the outside like it is on the inside. And so it's in the direction of better metaphors. And I think that as progress continues, we'll get better and better metaphors. So I don't like it to be taken too literally, but I do think it's a good
Wait,
framework.
100 years ago it was all gods and demons.
Right. Well, I mean, if you like your metaphors plausible, and I do, there's got to be a lot more simulations than there are primary universes, if it's going to be possible to make one at all, right? You've heard the logic on this, that, you know, if we don't blow ourselves up, and this is the long shot, right? But for 1,000 years of accelerating technology, we should be able to fool someone who wants to be fooled, right? You could take a little kid now and put him in one of those hotel rooms with a fake window that looks out on Tokyo, and they'll think it's a real window, right? So with any progress at all, we should eventually be able to fool such as wants to be fooled. We know that we're drawing all of this in. You're not like a little guy looking out of a hole in the fence at this stuff. It's, you know, photons are hitting your eyes, and neural signals is being sent up to your brain, and it's drawing all of this in. So if we could crack that code, when our descendants turn on the second game or ancestor simulation or whatever it is, there's two of them running in one real universe. When our descendants turn on the 10th game or ancestor simulation or whatever it is, there's 10 of them running in one real universe. If we get that far, we'll probably make a lot of them for a long time. Now, we could see 300 billion galaxies from here. The Hubble Deep Field shot bounced off of people, right? It was a big deal when we found out the Earth goes around the sun. It was a big deal to religion and politics and culture, and it changed things, and it was important. And then we found out we're in a galaxy. That was a big deal. And when we found out there's 300 trillion galaxies we can see from here, it bounced off of people like DMT trips do sometimes. They saw the picture in National Geographic and said, nope, don't know what to do with information like that. And just suppressed it immediately, all right? You've seen it. It's big. This is new. This is in our lifetimes that we found this out. We don't know how big it is. We know from here we can see them get further away from us. We're not going to be able to get there, but 300 billion galaxies. So lowball it to 100 billion galaxies. If every galaxy of 100 billion stars, lowballing it, only has one species that's capable of and willing to make a believable simulation, and they only make one, we could see, lowball it, 100 billion simulations from here. So what's the odds we're living in the bottom one, right? People get really Gnostic about it, like we're in somebody's little bug jar. And I prefer to think, well, you know, as far as I'm concerned, this centralizes us. We might be the fucking we might be the freaking customer. You know, we're who this is buying for and about. I wouldn't be here if I didn't. This thing didn't get 4 stars in universes.com.
Right. So,
No.
because you never know, because the different simulations are being run by God knows who.
Well, we don't know. This is the thing. We have no reason to think it's, you know, we don't know what it wants us to do with our willies or whatever. It could be freaking planet-sized quantum computers working together. We know nothing about the simulators, right? It actually kind of blows some of that stuff apart. Which, again, I think is probably liberating. It's nice not to know. I just prefer an intelligent universe made out of code than a random universe, like the sort of quintessence of space dust that you hear about in your high school.
It seems intelligent.
It seems intelligent.
It also seems.
It has a sense of humor. It's a sick sense of humor sometimes, but it has a sense of humor.
Yeah, well, it's different than our limited, right? Our limited.
It could be limited, but it isn't compared to us.
Right. And so, what does this mean about the characters that we're playing? Like, if we're in a simulation, which means we're not really us. We're an avatar.
Well, yeah, avatarism is my, not to say fake, but sort of silly Discordian religion. What would you do if you thought you were an avatar in a massively multiplayer game? And I think the upshot is that it changes the metaphor for you, the overarching metaphor. None of them are true, right? Like if you say it's a school, it's a test, it's a trap, it's a prison. That's not what the universe is. Those are things that occur in the universe, right? And there's things that are not them in the universe. But I feel like, at least for myself, for most applications, massively multiplayer game beats school or test or trap or prison as a sort of way to look at the situation. So like most people think it's a school. They're here to learn. Why did this happen to me? So I could learn something, right? I'm here to play my character and participate in a collective work of art. I do learn stuff. You know when you're about to level, right? Like the big boss stuff comes back and suddenly, new powers, new challenges. But I don't like to think of it as being here to learn. I'm here to play my character. So it's just sort of it's just a more positive framing for me personally.
Well, what I think is really interesting about that is you're making a distinction between the player and the character.
Right, yeah. Well, that's one of the things that I think psychedelics reveal to some people is how much of their personality is a hacked together, bug-ridden construct in the first place. Like,
right.
How much of their personality has always been a character that, this is the character that you play for your mom, for instance. I think it comes to the fore even at parties where like your work people are there and your parents are there and you realize like, oh, I play different characters with, you just feel like that's the way that you are. But then when they sort of clash, you realize that sort of you've been playing this character all along. And people are like, well, I'm just not like that. That's just not how I am. And you're like, because you chose that, right? And again, people sometimes get super freaked out when they realize that their personality is to some degree a construct, because it just seems existentially terrifying. But if you get all the way through it, you think, well, okay, that means I can construct it any way I want. You don't want to leave people halfway through the existential crisis. You don't go, oh, it's empty and meaningless, ha ha. You want to go all the way to like, so you can make any meaning of it that you want, right? Oh, you don't exist. Ha ha, that means that you can create your character any way that you want to create it. And I'm committed to it. I'm quixotic good. I play that. Like, I have rules that I make for myself and I abide by those rules. But, I don't believe it. I'm not so afraid, oh gosh, what when I die? My character's not going to be there. And it's like, okay. I don't identify with the character. I just enjoy the game.
So this is one of the neat things about, we're seeing a lot of psychedelics for therapeutics, right? People who are not well.
Yep.
We're seeing a lot of psychedelics for spiritual purposes, people who want to have mystic revelations and things like that. But then you're talking about kind of this transformational use where you are noticing that you are different than you thought you were originally, and then having an opportunity to create that at will.
I think that it probably has definitely has some overlap with the therapeutic
Oh, there's a Venn diagram
aspect,
for sure.
Because some of getting through trauma and getting past the stuff that's sort of been blocking you all the time, because it just keeps jacking the boxing up and not being processed, right? Because you have to feel your feelings eventually. If you don't do it up front, they just keep cutting in line and being like, me, yeah, my turn, and you're like, no, I'm not doing you yet, and like it keeps jumping back up in line. And so when you finally, go ahead and feel your feelings, then, oh, there's room for new stuff to emerge. That's great. I do think that it would be awesome if we could study more, like giving superpowers to healthy people. I like Charles Grove's doing some great work. People are doing it with the mystical experience stuff, with end-of-life anxiety or whatever. That's about as close as we're able to do, because of the way that the legalization thing works and the funding works, we can try to treat a problem. And thank God for that. Thanks for that. For depression and autism and end-of-life anxiety and PTSD and yes. I knelt down in front of Rick Doblin we were on a panel at Burning Man, and I was like, thank you for what you do. I appreciate it. I understand nobody thinks that we could, that's the guy who does the maps, he's making the maps PTSD, MDMA studies go, right? No, people think that you can't beat City Hall because they don't have the patience to jump through every single one of those hoops. And that said, are we going to have to get telepathic insensitivity syndrome put into the, what is it, DSM, the manual of...
DSM.
Yeah, we're going to have to get that put in the DSM to treat it, or isolated ego syndrome, or... I mean, they did it with hyperactive kid syndrome. We got this classified as a disease, so now that we can medically treat it, right? Like, how about linear time disorder? And they don't, you can't talk. They won't let me talk at MAPS anymore because they love me, but you can't talk about the big herd of woolly mammoths in the middle of the conference room. Well, what about the, extra dimensional? They can't go looking for it. They might find it. This is just, it's boring. This is medicine. This is helping people with depression. Yes, and.
You like using animals as metaphors.
Do I?
You see, I've heard you mention clams and cephalopods and woolly mammoths over various.
Oh, okay. I was just like, oh gosh. Yeah, sure. Maybe.
You don't want to say more about the.
I can't think of any.
Okay. Fair enough. So. They won't let you speak at MAPS anymore.
No, I mean they love me. They're doing a specific thing. And I always you never trust a fairy, and I'll come up there and go like.
But they like when you hang out at the Zen.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, of course. No, I work, the MAPS thing that I am allowed to work is the Zendo project. It's the Psychedelic Emergence, with the Y in parentheses thing at festivals. And so, the naked guy gets spun out and security brings him into medical and medical checks him out. It's not a hardware problem. Gets shunted over to us, and we just try to get you back up on the surfboard, keep you out of the tender arms of security, get you back with your friends. And I worked 26 shows last year of Psychedelic Emergence between Bicycle Day and Bicycle Day. So Real Zendo only does 5 shows, but I work with another medical team, and I do flow festivals by myself. And I feel like it ought to be that any event that doesn't suck has an emergence space. It should be like, where's medical? You don't say, do you guys have medical? Right? It ought to be, where is the emergence space? And it ought to not be pathologized, where this must be where you are if you're having a bad trip, right? This is like, if you're having a big one. Women, very reasonably, are socialized especially not to abandon our bodies in public. There's reasons for this, but if you're having a big one and your friends are off, they want to go see Bass Nectar by the trash bins or whatever, there is a place for you to come and do this thing where someone will celebrate with you. Yes, I think I just had the real thing right now. I believe that you did, right? Because, again, people will suppress it immediately if there's no context for it. And we'll celebrate you. We'll listen to your testimony. We'll take you to the portas. We'll make you tea. We'll just sit there quietly and hold your hand, and there is a place for this. And so I've really been trying to get the word out that it's not a bad thing if you're in there. And also, me and Ashley Booth is amazing. Who does Aware Project. I've been trying to just spread the word that at 11:11 in the morning at a festival outside of the Zendo space, there's an integration circle. And it's just so people know that. It's pure light. They'll just come together and say, what happened to you last night? Oh my God, I was abducted by aliens or whatever. And then they can talk about that. And people all have stories like, anybody else ever had a telepathic experience? It was the whole festival last night. And just the conversations that come out of that are amazing, and it doesn't mean you're having a hard time now. You just had a big one last night, and we can come together and talk about it, because if you don't talk about it, again, you suppress it. And even blissful experiences, I think, can get suppressed in a way that's not healthy, because you have something that's not a process. And if you don't talk about it, and you don't think about it, and you just immediately close the lid on it and go, whoa, last night was weird, I think that it still is going to keep coming up and wanting to be processed. I've known a lot of people who was actually a ecstatically blissful experience that they had repressed, but it was still blocking them.
What makes for an awesome emergent space?
Well, I like it to be like not too bright in there, you know, because medical has to have big bright lights, and I like it to have cushions, and a tea maker is really good. You don't want to give them like boil. Yeah, tea, dude. I'll boil down to tea. But I think if it's possible to set it up so that not everyone can see each other, it's sometimes really good to. It depends on what kind of space is available, but ideally if you could kind of curtain off little sections of it with like beautiful tapestries or something, so that, because some stuff is contagious, you know, and one person will be trying to work out something really personal, and then like, you know, other guy over here, like, I'm doing all right, but this thing is freaking me out, and like, we all got to be in the same place, and so, but also, have you ever had the experience with psychedelics? If you can't see it, it's not there. If you're under the table, you're in the little world, and like the big world out there in the living room is like another world. So it doesn't take much more than a little curtain to be in your own world over here. And mostly it's just the people. I mean, everybody I know who works this got into it because we have compassion for the situation. I mean, everybody who works this has fallen in at some point, where it's just, you know, took a wrong step and suddenly, you know, it was 10,000 years until the lights came back on or whatever. And so it's people who have actually been through it and have the compassion. And there's definitely certain organizations like, who does Electric Daisy? Some of these really big, like, rave festivals have emergent spaces that they're restrained and sedate is the plan. So what we want to do is zip tie people to backboards. And they've got a hallway full of backboards of people zip tied, you know, being re-traumatized. They get a anal probe whether they like it or not. Like everybody gets a temperature taken the other way, yeah. And then if they won't settle down, they get put down with ketamine. Really? Oh yeah. No, insomniac. No, I've been there, and it may have changed in the last couple of years, but I haven't heard that it has. And you know, there was this one board nurse sitting there on her phone poking her Facebook, and she's like, oh, it doesn't matter, they're not going to remember it anyway. I was like, I mean, even if they don't, I mean, how many people do you know who are still messed up with their sexuality because of a funny game of horsey they played with their uncle when they're 9 years old? Just because they don't remember it doesn't mean it isn't traumatic. You just made them lose the key to the memory. That doesn't help anybody. So, yeah, kind people mainly, you know. And that's you, that's the thing. It's like, it doesn't have to be a space. If you just see that kid on the side of the road eating their ID and you're like, hey, brother, is there anything I can do to make your moment a little bit more blissful? Like, oh shit, I manifested you. Like, I can't find my hand, the water, the porta potty, my camp. Like, here's your hand. I'll put the water in it. I'll take you to the porta potty. Can you describe your camp? Oh, it's such a miracle. And so if you don't walk by it, it'll help you charge your subprime mass karma card for one thing. Because like I said, you know, your 10 minutes might be 10,000 years to this guy, so it's a lot of points for you.
I sort of want to see if we can get the whole crowd all at once to say, hey brother, is there anything I can do to make your time more blissful?
Okay, look at right. So it's hey brother, is there anything I can do to make your universe a little more blissful?
Hey,
Ready? Wait. 1, 2, 3.
Hey, brother, is there anything I can do to make your universe a little more blissful? Yes! Yes, I'll say, and again I'll say yes.
So
usually there is. Sometimes they're just like, no, you know, if this one is good, if they can't talk and they'll be like, I'm cool, you know, raise your thumb up and down, or like,
that's the move.
you're like, okay, you know, help you find your people. But man, if you don't believe in psychedelic synchronicity, I tell you that working this will show you something. Because you know that it looks this way from the inside. I am telling you, it looks this way from the outside. I have seen it over and over, stone cold sober. Like, this person's toast finally pops, you know, and they resolve and integrate. Oh, and the moon comes out, the DJ gets better, their friends come back to get them. And I'll even tell them, now your friend's going to be here in a minute. I said, how do you know? I said, because your toast just popped, you're fine. And it's like you can set your watch by it. It's pretty freaking amazing, the timing on these things. And sometimes the whole festival gets better, and you're like, this was the problem. You know, the knot that was going on with this kid right here. And sometimes winds blow through it. Like, lightning in a bottle a few years ago. We had one night where like there was 7 of them, took off all their clothes, rolling around, glossing out, doesn't remember it syndrome. In the same hour, identifiably different substances, different sources. Whoa. And so, you don't know, but if you want to study it, that's the thing. You'd have to be a Nazi scientist to, like, a well-designed study does not produce people unhinged in time, for instance. Right? And we put in this thing for the study. We're going to vortex people and see if, like, but if you want to study it, it comes to you all night long, and it's deeply fascinating. Like, look, proof is a big word, but let's see if we can demonstrate that you're half a second ahead, right? Wow. And again, as someone who, I'm not a shaman, I'm not a mental health professional. I'm a psychedelic voyeur in the sense that I like to watch. But you pick up little things, and like I was in the Amazon freaking every other day for 6 weeks trying to get this dart out of my chest. It was lack to die, and I didn't die, and that was amazing. And the lady's saying, well, you know, you could come here and do diets. But the thing is, if you get far enough in that world, you appear on a board where you already have friends and enemies, where your teachers, enemies, students are already your, and you know, you don't want to play the reindeer games, and you have to, you know, all the Jedi training you've ever wanted is being handed to you, and then if you don't want to play their freaking reindeer games, you have to choose to be a dilettante, you know, walk away from it.
Will you unpack that a little bit more?
Sure.
You show up on the board.
Well, I don't know the details of it, but my understanding is that, you know, they love playing this, I'm not saying everyone in the Amazon, but there's definitely a video game, speaking of virtuality, going on where, you know, they're showing up in each other's ceremonies, and we're throwing little darts at each other, and you got a menu of magic items and freaking Pokemon in your chest, right? And if you don't want to play this World War game, you know, she's like, oh no, we don't do it Tuesday and Sunday nights because freaking Bruja night, and they're freaking all signed on doing the thing. Then, you know, you subject yourself to the possibility of being in a ecology in which some of the shamans just like to fight each other, right?
Because it's politics.
Because it's politics, because it's territory, because it's money. I mean, it used to be the old ice cream ban, and if your kid was sick, you give him a chicken. And you were praying you didn't have to do it, right? You don't want to take ayahuasca. They say, oh, you got to do it yourself. They're like, oh, shit. Then white people showing up on the plane, well, they want to take it, right? And so suddenly, these guys who were not immunized against this kind of huge ego boo, because like I said, you were next level up from Jungle Bunny until recently. You know, people there, they're the rock stars and huge amounts of money. In that world, I mean, you know, you drive a tuk-tuk around Iquitos all day long, you make maybe $20, right? You could get ayahuasca at Baylet Market for $20. You'd be down there with a sign that says your grandpa's a 10th generation shaman too. But there's a huge amount of, you know, ego going on in this, and in all the worlds. I mean, everywhere there is it. As I was saying about the 5-MeO community, there's, you know, like about psychedelic, like antibiotic-resistant strains of bacteria. I think there's something like psychedelic-resistant strains of ego. That it's getting suppressed, you know, it doesn't quite kill it, you know, it doesn't take quite all the sipper or whatever, and the one that pops back up can freaking take it, right? And so, you know, you just keep kind of washing it over with this thing, and the ego gets actually really strong. It's kind of paradoxical that, inflation is an occupational hazard associated with the ego death experience. And it's really, really true. I mean, I'm not taking myself off of that list. I'm just saying, wow, you know, you have to be really, really pure about it, because there really is, and also just the power, man. You can manifest anything you want. It's incredible. You know, it just drops in your hand like the fly all the time, and it's really easy to feel like, wow, I'm such a fucking superhero.
I can't help but think when you say character, I hear ego. Like I hear character and ego interchangeably.
I feel like there's a difference between character and ego. Like, there's an ego. Character is important to me. Like I said, I'm here to play my character. I want to be involved in this game. I'm interested in that as a game. It's in like playing your character. Like, I think that maybe that's part of what it's for. I think it's partly art. I think it's partly fun. I think that like ego is like that sharp sword that you hang off the side of your belt, and you need your machete to hack through the bushes and to fight leopards with it. But you got to put it in the sheath when you're not using it, or it'll cut the fuck out of your leg just walking around, right? like I think ego has a use. People are just trying to diminish the ego with psychedelic chemotherapy like it's a tumor, and they're throwing out the baggie with the bong water because character is important.
Right, but again, machete is a metaphor.
For sure,
So
of
the
course.
ego is like a lot of things
Sure.
that are useful.
Yeah,
Just like having a character that will play the game in the way you want it to. Is
exactly. No, that's totally useful. But the thing of like, oh, I'm the baddest shaman in the Amazon, and like
Yeah, that's annoying.
that's annoying. And the thing of like, feeling like you're above people and you're entitled to things, and I just think there is a trap there, and I think there is a trap there in the community, and I try to avoid that trap. I'm not against ego. I just am against like hyperinflation.
Right, well, like entitlement is what is it? It's just sort of, it's viral, it's unhealthy expression of ego, right? Whereas it's like, I'm running around, like I've created, the ego's been constructed in such a way that it's walking guys to the porta potty at 3 in the morning.
That's
In
the thing.
service, right?
Exactly. That's
And I don't want to kill it, I just want to
Right.
orient it to service.
exactly. You want to actually craft it as a work of art. You want to be that person. Well, I don't know who you want to be, but I want to be that person who's out there picking up cigarette butts at 5 o'clock in the morning, because say that you were the cool kids. What do you want the teenagers to see? You want to see the cool kids picking up trash at 5 o'clock in the morning. That is the freaking example that you want to set.
Hooting and hollering like it's the most fun thing
And
to
hooting
do in
and
your
hollering
life.
because it is the most fun thing, because every single second is the most fun possible thing. Alright, watch me talk slower. I can do it. I'm going to put my hand on I'm not playing with myself here. I'm putting my hand on my diaphragm.
Should we all take some breaths?
Yeah, it's breath together.
Create like kind of a telepathic field of like peace and serenity.
One more. Okay, let's try it again. Ha. I'm gonna succeed this time. Watch, it's a mindfulness game. You gotta ask me a question or something.
Well, when it's a mindfulness game, when I think about mindfulness and the simulation, the metaphor of the computer information processing, it's interesting how increasing the resolution somehow decreases commitment to malware. Commitment's not the right word.
I have no commitment to malware, but what do you mean?
Well, like, we get all wrapped up in loopy processes, right? You get hung, like the processor hangs, and somehow increasing the resolution breaks us out of that loop.
I'm not sure which way you mean resolution, though there's definitely something interesting in, for instance, the ayahuasca DMT family, where the resolution can be better than this. Makes this look like a grainy ass hologram. So apparently your visual cortex can, in theory, process images at a much finer grain than the one that we're seeing right here. Like, my experience with the Boga was, it was at this resolution because it was just my memories. Couldn't tell it wasn't this, right? And I've often wondered if the higher resolution suggests it's a further layer out or a further layer in, if that's even a meaningful distinction.
I feel like the higher resolution means that the attention isn't on other processes.
Right. Yeah. Oh, yeah. If you keep your mind, the more of your mind you can keep on what you're intentionally focused on, the less unused cycles, that anything else can jump in on, for sure.
And that's the fun thing about great music, is that it keeps us out of our
Yeah.
head.
Well, music's a miracle. If it's so often at Zendo, we're right across the street from like the dirty dubstep stage or something where it's like it sounds like robots farting and fucking, and you're like, hey, what'd you feed your robot? But these poor kids, and I want to run over and tell the DJ, could you just play some housey, like some kind of, no, of course I can't, So I've been wanting to just bring like really good cans to give people with some more less terrifying music to listen to.
Can you just play like an East Coast 1976
Yeah,
show?
Grateful Dead, right? Or if you get confused, just listen to the music play.
So how have you grown? Like, how has this changed and evolved you, going to so many circles, emergence tents, Zendos?
Well,
over so many years?
I got I learned to slow down. Like, again, I'm excited right now, so you might not be seeing that, but I can sit with someone for 6 hours still and silent, if that's what they need, which is a superpower, I think, that I've advanced. Psychedelically, I've developed a one-way permeable membrane that did not used to be the case, because these people often want to hold on to you, and if you can see that person's screensaver, you are too freaking close. You do have a problem, my friend. It's just geometry, but I've seen profane geometry, and you don't want to see it, right? And so, I end up having to go back behind the thing and purge, and I'd be later on at night still going that kid had a problem there. Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
And I've sort of really developed a membrane that my compassion flows out, my love flows out. It's strong. The stuff coming in hits me like, have you ever seen one of those Faraday cage suits that you can wear, and then a Tesla coil can hit you and it just pours over you? It's like it just hits to the outside of me and it just pours over me and it pours right into the ground. It does not get in here.
Like aerodynamics.
Yeah, and that said, you freaking still go dance it off at Dawn said, and then put your hands on the earth and just make sure that you don't get no bugs on you, because like I said, some of that stuff is contagious.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a thing that we don't necessarily think about until it's right in our face.
Again, here we are with no training, right? Like I said, choosing to be a dilettante, and so, we have to sort of learn this stuff from each other. And I'm one level above a villager in D&D, right? This stuff, I go and blow smoke around the sanctuary space. Maybe that's a 1-point protection, maybe it's not, right? But I've gotten pretty good at 1, 2, 3, and we're back. And I can look at somebody and say 1, 2, 3, and we're back. And time resumes its normal flow, and people say, "How did you do that?" And I say, "I don't know."
Oh, that's a good trick.
But they'll fall back out, and they say, could you, or they'll some get me in the back. "Hey, Fairy, could you come out here and 1, 2, 3 and back? 1, 2, 3, we're back with this kid." And I'm like, okay, ready, watch me. 1, 2, 3, and we're back. How'd you do that? I don't know. But, eventually you do learn these little cantrips, or just, some of it's just learning to listen really well. And if you just create this space of open listening, and for them knowing that they're being seen and that they're safe and that it's okay that this is happening, and not only they don't need to be sorry, but you really believe that this is both the most interesting and important thing happening at this entire festival, then, they'll suddenly start kind of doing therapy. They weren't expecting it. They don't even know about psychedelic therapy necessarily. But as soon as it stops spinning, they'll be like, I was raped by a boyfriend a couple of years ago or something, and they'll tell the story, because the thing that's trying to integrate will be integrating. And so, it's not just a matter of getting them a blanket. It's creating this space of listening where they feel held and they feel safe, and they feel like that this is the most important thing happening at this event, and that you would do anything to help them out. I tell them, look, I'm kinky to serve trippers. It's not submissive at all, but if I can go to your car and get you your teddy bear, I am thrilled to go and get it, because this is so freaking important what's happening right now. And I really do want to hear your story. I'm really, really interested, and I really care, and I'm not going to tell anybody, that I'm not going to laugh at you, that I want to be present for you telling this thing. And sometimes people just don't have that in their life. They don't even have a friend that they can talk to about stuff, and so there's just this moment of vulnerability. And I say, look, you're going to level tonight. I'm standing for this being your finest moment, right? The sun's going to rise over there, and I know time's not moving forward for you, but time's moving forward for me. Okay, you stick with me. The sun's going to rise over there, and we're going to be talking about this part in the past tense. We're already there, and in the meantime, we have an opportunity. What do we want to do with that? Something, Matt. You came here for transformation. These are transformational festivals, okay? You're getting some transformation. It's working, right? Here's your transformation right here. It's not something bad that's happened. It's just something awesome that's happened that's gotten you away from your friends, and it's gotten you an opportunity to freaking actually do the work. And I have seen so many people have the best night of their life. They just came in, like I said, naked, screaming, whatever. They end up, that sun is rising, and they're standing there with their fists up, hands open, and just saying, I did not know. This is the first day of my life. And, it's not something that happened once or twice. This is something that happens and happens and happens. They don't pay me. Freaking Zinder doesn't pay anybody. I don't get paid. I would like to get paid if they could just take the money from one DJ and they'd be able to pay us all for the entire season. Or help me out. But they also know that I would pay to do it. Because what's a more beautiful thing than you ever get to see than that? To see total breakdown to total breakthrough.
That's gorgeous. So, what are the qualities? Like you've given us anecdotes. Like, what are the qualities other than just like love and willingness and selflessness that also would help somebody to do this?
I mean, I think that's mostly it. Sense of humor is good.
Sense of humor. And then conversely, how can it go wrong?
Oh man, the thing I see the most repeatedly is how they got here in the first place. Is they started to have a little bit of dissonance, and then their people are like, "Are you having a bad trip? I think this guy's having a bad trip. Oh, Joe's having a bad trip. Like, oh shit, you okay, man? No, answer me. I don't think he's okay. Like, tell us about it. No, it's alright. He's just having a bad trip." And you're like, guys, do you ever see like a little kid run and bite it, and then they look, and if mom's like, "You're cool," they're like, "Oh, I'm cool," and if mom's like, "Ah," they're like, "Ah," right? And so it's just, you're all right. And I was like, oh, I was with these people who were thinking I have a problem, right? Like I said, the contagious.
You can't even trust your friends.
Right, no, well, and that's the thing, and sometimes the paranoia will come on. My friends are taking me back to the tent to sacrifice me, and they say, oh, no, like, it's okay, think about it. Thousands and thousands of people have had the idea that their friends are gonna do them in or something, and like, that's happened like, what, never in the world, like, what's the likelihood of what's going on, right? But it really seems real. The paranoia is real because you feel you're part of some epic mythical moment, and your mind wants to storytell around it. A lot of times it's just contentless anxiety. So you physically feel the feeling of anxiety. And then you're looking around thinking what it must be about. Well, I feel nervous. It must be those guys. Or I feel nervous. It must be that the cops are here and looking for me. Or I feel nervous, I must be about to go crazy. Yes, I really done it this time, right? Now, give yourself something to be nervous about.
And this comes back to feeling our feelings, because we don't want to. We'd rather blame them on external objects.
Well, people just don't understand. You think, well, my alarm's going off. It must be, something is going off, right? And I think actually background anxiety is almost every addiction. You think that like crystal meth and like heroin would be opposite strategies. But they're often strategies for the same problem, which is meditating. I mean, not meditating. Meditating would be a good plan. Medicating background anxiety. Alcohol, benzos, anything. I have this feeling of background anxiety all the time, and I think it's about this or that, and I just want to turn that thing off and like get in trouble a whole bunch of different ways because of just trying to not feel the background anxiety. So, with psychedelics, you get more sensitive to everything you feel, and if that background anxiety is loud, it's now really, really loud, right? Most of the time, there's nothing actually wrong. It's just an alarm going off because we weren't evolved to have this much stimulus, basically.
One of the mantras we used in our crew when people were losing it, would anything be wrong if you didn't think it was?
You're right, nothing's wrong but thinking makes it so. Well,
And it helped a lot.
Yeah, well, and I'll say, like, is it bad content or is it just a lot? And sometimes it's bad content. Nope, blood, scary stuff, keep seeing people's eyes popping out. But, like, most of the time it's just a lot. It's just overwhelming. It's just, well, that's okay. I'm a birth doula. Like, I've only been to 3 births, but I took the classes. And you get to this point of, like, I can't do this. And you're like, you don't have to do it. It's going to do it itself. Like, there's something you have to do in about, like, 10 hours from now, right? And so people are like, I can't do it. Like, you don't have to do it. It's going to do it itself. You just lay out here and let it do what it do. And it's you. And I'm like, it doesn't seem like me. I'm like, right, okay, but look at what you're seeing with your eyes closed. Now try to make it more blue for 1 second. Succeed? Try to slow it down just a little bit. See, it's you. It might go right back, but if you can affect it at all, right, it's at least affectable by you, and that gives people a lot of confidence.
So that's sort of how it goes wrong. Like people, like why people show up as
Right.
far. So I'm also curious about like how does it go wrong from the ground control trip sitter guide perspective? Like how do we tighten up? How can guides, trip sitters, Like, what are the red flags? What does the community have to look out for?
Let's see, I'm trying to think of examples that I've seen. I work with really amazing people. So I haven't seen too much go wrong in that way. It goes wrong when there's too many guests for people, and so you have to have be watching 3 different people and you're not able to pay. And it really should be one-on-one if it's possible to have somebody who's just there for you. That's not always the case because, again, we're not getting paid. It's hard to get people to come and do this, but sometimes people will have their own idea about, I have, the simulation hypothesis, for instance, I'm not supposed to lay that on people, right? You're not, people will have their own pet theory about the universe, and this person's vulnerable, and you're like, well, let me just explain to you, it's the Galactarians, and you're like, I mean, maybe, but, it's unethical to lay this on the person who's wide open, and you're supposedly taking care of them, and even if you're right, it doesn't matter, you don't get to lay your trip on people. Or people will have a pet theory about, aromatherapy helps. We're just going to put orange stuff on there. And they're like, what are you doing? And you just got to get consent for everything you do. You can pick a little light and you say, I have this bottle of stuff. I'm going to just make a really light smell of it for a second. Would you like to smell that stuff? Oh, no, that's way too bright. Okay, right? Or oh, gosh, yes, pour that on. Right? But sort of gentling that. What else could go wrong with sitters? It's really, really very rare that I see sitters who are causing more harm than good in that situation.
You also wanted to talk about things that can go right or wrong in the 5MEO community as it evolves.
Well,
is that true?
Yeah, I've sort of circled around this thing a lot. I think that it sort of developed differently than DMT did, and it's not exactly clear, what the storylines are of why. There's not a thing that people feel for the most part that they need a shaman for DMT, or maybe they do, but there's not as much of that dynamic going on in that community. But the thing that I feel there's the obvious things. We can't be rapey, guys. If it's that crazy sparky. Months, you can't get with these people, not for months. Really not at all. If you've been serving with them, you can say, look, I've got a spark with you, and we could pursue either one of these things, right? But we're gonna have to pick one.
Which is actually a tough
It's super
conversation.
tough.
It almost flies in the face of biology.
It certainly does, but there's a power dynamic, and it's not, even if you're not presenting as the shaman and the emissary of this thing, they're wide open. And they come back to see you looking at them, and it's like, oh, that's associated with, the perfection of the mystery or whatever. And some people have figured out that they have that advantage in them, even if they're not thinking it in words. They unconsciously know that they have that advantage. And but the client, they were all over me. I wasn't trying to hit on them. I had said no 3 times, and they kept coming back to me. And it's like, yeah, you still got to say no 4 times. Come on.
What really blew me away was reading that Leo Zeff had that. Leo Zeff was one of the first psychedelic psychotherapists and treated hundreds of people before it was cool. And he had agreements, and that was one of them. We're not going to have that relationship, and he said it out loud with words.
Well, I think he said ever, right?
Ever,
Yeah, I say look, it's 3 months from now that we can have this conversation, And maybe that's even iffy, but
Not 2 months and 3 weeks.
No, we don't know, and we're not even talking about it we can talk about this in a week. We're not talking about it, right? But the thing that really bothers me about the way that it's being done is these big mixed groups of strangers. I have a problem with it because I don't have any problem with people making money at all. I did a thing called Carrying the Light about it it's on my podcast. If you look up Tea Faerie Carrying the Light, you can find it. It's farmers, doctors, nannies, shrinks, masseuses, priests, and whores is getting paid for sacred work. It's okay to charge for yours. But if you're putting profit over people in the way of having 10 people lined up tonight, right? Then again, there's 10 again tonight. And it's our goal to send them all home high, heroic, happy, humbled, healed, and whole. You're up, right? Step right up, lay right down. All this can be you for the low, low price of all the market will bear. And if they're not an exhibitionist, even if you do a long thing and sort of, we're this group, people are nervous. Like, you forget if you do it yourself. Some people, this is their first time. They've read a lot of stuff about this. They have a bunch of different mixed expectations. And they're waiting in line and they're watching the person in front of them have, it might be a really beautiful exorcism, But they're thinking, oh gosh, is that going to happen to me? And then they're up and, you're on the dime right now. And sure, you can sit there and meditate for 15 minutes, but you should be able to get right up to it and then say, I need to meditate for 3 hours or whatever it is, if this is really as important as it seems to be. And because some people, if you ask them in 20 years, this happened with the psilocybin studies. They'll say this was the most important thing that's ever happened to them in their entire lives. This is not going to be a boring 20 years that's coming up. And it's easy to sort of dismiss it in the, wanting to show this to a lot of people. I don't even think it's a lot of greed. I think it's like this ambition to show, about this wonderful thing, and you want to show it to a lot of people. But then the person has their experience, and then they have to sit there for 3 more hours while the next few people go, and they suppress it immediately because they didn't actually get a chance to process it. And so if it's close-knit pods and nests, if it's you and your partner, or these 3 best friends, and people who really want to hold space for each other, then that's awesome. And otherwise, I think it just has to be a reasonable amount of people, and it has to be look, if one person just wants the facilitator to witness and doesn't want any of the rest of these people to witness, there needs to not be another room those people could go to. And there needs to be no blame. Oh, you don't want people watching you. It's you get to select the people you want there witnessing, and that has to be totally fine. And it has to be fine to take as long as it takes. And then when it's done, if you need to talk about it for a while, you either need to be able to do that there, or if we're trying to get some people through, there needs to be another facilitator that you can go and have that conversation with them in the other room and have a place to talk about what just happened to you, because I think it's super, super important. And I don't think most people are bad intentioned at all. But I've just watched that thing happen a few times and seen people have experiences that were amazing, but would just have been a little bit more ideal if they could have had this be about them. And it's totally possible to get married in the Vegas chapel and, the Elvis chapel or whatever, and that's legit, I guess. But if this is the thing that they're saying that it is, if this could be the one, if this could be the breakthrough for you, if this is something like enlightenment, or what did it say, Brahman source code, the imminent, immaculate, immortal mind of God with a capital G, then they ought to suck it up and act like they believe it, in which case they got a couple hours on it for this kid at least. Woo!
You say it's not going to be a boring 20 years.
No, the next 20 years is going to be real fun.
What do you think? What are your predictions?
I mean, this is, if it's a game that's there's as many people alive now as there was people since art or something. It's been 10 billion people, because there used to be a lot less, right? So, this is a pretty popular moment on the server. I think everybody wants to see this, seriously, you got an avatar in 2019. What did you do today? This is, when I'm down on myself, it's almost always that I did not appreciate this enough. Even if my own 80-year-old self could come back and live one day in my body, do you think I would have scratched my balls and watched South Park? Maybe a little bit, but really, this is it. It's happening right now. This is make it or break it. Go back to anybody in the past that you admire, and just start naming stuff until they would literally cut off a nut to be you. We live in a world where there's recorded music and Novocaine, okay? Woo! Dude, you don't gotta be the King's friends to listen to Beethoven. You can listen to the music of people who are dead, people who aren't here. You could, you're tooth obsessed, and it did. Your buddy had to knock it out with a rock until really recently. This is amazing. It's an amazing time to be here. I didn't think I couldn't be an astronaut because I didn't have perfect vision. I thought I couldn't be I didn't think I couldn't be an astronaut because I was a girl. I thought I couldn't be an astronaut because I didn't have perfect vision. My grandma took math for girls, right? This is about as good as it's going to get before artificial intelligence comes on. This is, in that sense, the readout generation of this is how good we got on our own. And we are right here, right now. And, don't be missing it. If you're bored, it's you. For sure. It's not boring out here. And I think that there's like the stuff that's happening with the environment, the stuff that's happening with technology, the stuff that it's got to come so close every freaking time this happens, right? Because if evolution's going to continue, drugs are going to get better. I mean, we're going to just, when we get the thing that just prints out molecules, we're going to find out about a lot of stuff we don't have right now. Like, I'm jealous of my grandkids' drugs for sure. We're going to think ours were like clumsy cudgels compared to the really, really dial to your own nervous system stuff that's about to be there. But I don't know where she was going with this. What's going to happen in the future? It's really close. Okay, yeah. So almost every time it happens in the galaxy or in the universe or whatever, it's got to be really, really close like this because it has to, winners and losers survival compete where the losers don't breed as much as the winners until it can upgrade its genome intelligently. And just about when it gets there, it can destroy the entire enterprise, right? So if evolution, people think this could be the big filter, this could be the reason we don't see a lot of aliens out here because right when it gets to the point that we could make mass abundance, right? We're just about to have, nanotechnology that we could just make, or we could turn shit into strawberries or whatever. It's just about when we get that is the same point when we get the ability to destroy the entire thing. And it's such a freaking coin flip. And I really think that we have an advantage because I think that there's story value in this thing. I always say we might lose a continent on the play. If there's any aesthetic justice, the one we live on, but I'm not really that worried about the career of novelty. It's what it's been doing all along. And I think if there's anything to back manifesting, if you've ever manifested something, like you just really put your will towards something coming true and like, oh my gosh, it came immediately true. But it had to have started in the past, right? It had to have been coming up all this time. Maybe it's just determined and there's loops in it, but if there's anything to back propagating, the futures that have sentient minds in them are louder or stronger or more likely to exist because they're sitting back to where we are now. So like, I think there's a few different ways in which we probably have an advantage. But what an amazing game, you have a more amazing game, I can't think of it. So, get out there and move your guy around, like do stuff, see what you can do. You can do more than you think, like, think, oh, what can I do? Almost as soon as you get interesting, it gets interesting for you. Like, I always say I'm playing to the seventh wall. Like, my fans on the Cosmic Periscope are, watching what I'm doing, and maybe when you have more viewers share or something, you have more bandwidth or like ability to affect the thing. But my experience is that when you get interesting, it gets interesting around you, right? If you're just watching the same TV shows and going to work and you're on a boring track, it's like it can run you on probabilistic tracks because it's got a lot of bandwidth but not infinite. But basically, as soon as your act starts wailing, it will mic it. And go see if it isn't so. And go see if it isn't so that when you're taking psychedelics, even like when your mind suddenly pops up as doing something interesting. Oh my gosh, it's amazing what happens around you. You go out on the fly, you were thinking about that one kind of Italian soda that somebody just like that, right? And if that sounds crazy, just ignore it. If it meets with your experience, go like, that is what I experienced. Like, what else could I do?
Can you give us some experiments? Like some little tasks of little interesting experiments.
Well, for goodness sake, if you think that you saw something that somebody else saw, like if you think you shared visions with somebody, like you both go out and you kind of come back at the same time, and I was there too. For gosh sakes, will you please write it down and share the papers before you talk? Because your memory is suspect the second they said what they saw. Even to yourself. I mean, you're not going to prove it. Prove is a big word, but to demonstrate it to yourself, it's worth writing it down before you say the thing out loud. This is a good little experiment. There's definitely resonance experiments. If you sort of in resonance with somebody, if you text each other at the same times or whatever, you can sort of play little games with it. I'm not quite sure what kind of experiments that you're talking about.
Well, I'm talking about, you were saying when you get more interesting, it gets more interesting.
Oh, I see.
Right, so it's like, step one, turn off the same television show you've been watching over and over again.
Right. Well, I mean,
And then
even even just thinking about it, if you're just thinking about it all the time where you're like, okay, I'm on, I'm active, like I'm actually putting my channel open to say like, check me out, you know, talk to your fans on the Cosmic Periscope. It's kind of silly, but when you have a choice of which thing to do the more interesting choice. There was a really interesting interview with Elon Musk, right? Not the Joe Rogan one, the one after that, the Code Recode one. And they said, well, why did you actually, because he believes in simulation theory, and I said, well, why did you actually, launch your Tesla into space and when they did the Falcon Heavy the first time? And he said, really? It was because it was the more interesting thing to do. And I think that the simulation favors, it's like fortune favors the bold. I think that the simulation favors the more interesting outcome. So if you do the most beautiful thing, the most epic thing, you know, you've got Starman out there playing David Bowie into the night or whatever, that's more likely to happen. It's more likely for that to happen in your rocket ship not to blow up than if you just did a boring one, because it's such a good story. And I think Terrence McKenna thought this too. He said, I think the best story will win. And so if you come up with the best story, like that, all other things being even, it'll be more likely to just put that 1% more of odds on your thing. So if you don't know what to do in a situation, do the one that's the best story. If you know what to do that, right? But if you don't know what to do, they say the ritual is what you do when you don't know what to do. If you know what to do that. If you don't know what to do the more interesting choice. And that doesn't always necessarily, mean doing the most noble thing that you could possibly do. Like it mostly does for my character class. But sometimes it's just, I'm going to do this because this is going to be great theater, right? And like, okay, I still, and then just watch, just pay attention and be like, is the things that I want to have happen just more and more happening around me? Just self-experiment. You might just be like, nope, Fairie's crazy. She takes way too much drugs. Like, that is not what's happening. But I invite people to try it. I've seen a lot of people that have this experience, like when they suddenly travel and they've been on the same situation and they suddenly hit the road, and it's like every single thing. Or like Burning Man is a wonderful example, because people who don't talk about this, who don't think about this, who don't write about it, who aren't interested in it, who don't know the language around it, will say, this weird thing happened to me. I woke up thinking about this, like I said, some weird soda or some particular thing, and I just walked out there and it was like, it fell into my hand, and then I was like, I really wanted to ride on that one art car, and then I turned around and it was behind me. And you hear these stories over and over because this is a highly rated scene. Like, what's happening here is interesting, and there's a huge, I think it's amplified by the number of highly rated characters in your proximity. So, between us, we have a highly rated scene here. Like, the six of us, believe me, we got a lot of viewers put together, in which case we can do anything. My favorite story about this is the guy who did the tightrope across the Twin Towers, Philip Petit. Best art crime of the 20th century, right? There was a Caldecott winning children's book about it, only in the 70s. Where he shot a wire across the towers and he walks out on it. Like, the whole thing is just swaying and it's like a million stories up. And he was the viewpoint character in that scene, and he could do anything. He had all of God's attention, God plural, whatever. Like, he knelt down on it. He laid down on it for 45 minutes, over to one side to get arrested, and then back over to the other side to get arrested. And it was just too freaking good of a scene for him to fall off of the damn thing.
Do you want to take some questions from the
Questions?
crowd?
Yeah.
Okay, you said that the universe was playful, and sometimes it had a wicked sense of humor. But,
Don't want to start any blasphemous rumors.
but it seems to me that the universe is indifferent and sometimes even sadistic.
Oh man, I tell people, look, if you don't believe in manifestation and wishes coming true, you ought to at least be able to believe in irony. Like, it's not just that this was a shitty thing to happen. It was the shittiest thing that could possibly happen to you specifically, right? Like, it is trying. What I imagine it's doing is not trying to make a happy outcome necessarily. It's trying to make a good story, right? So imagine if you were making games and stories like this, and you were eternal or very long-lived, right? Like, very long-lived. You would get over candid universes pretty quickly, where it's just like, oh, it's rainbows and unicorns and everybody's thing works out. It's like a baby universe. But like, what's your favorite movies and symphonies and stuff? It's like the ones that like, oh, and it gets crushed down into the muck and then it barely reaches up and it almost grabs the bottom rung with its fingertips and it freaking catches it and then it falls off again and then like the music rises up on again, you know, and they finally freaking make it covered in dirt and glory at the end of the thing. Like, I think that it's aesthetic. Look, this is our beautiful, perfect universe in which shit like Hiroshima happens. It does not pull punches at all. Right, so far I have not seen that this thing pulls punches. I do believe it's a beautiful story because that's what keeps me getting up in the morning. Like, and you hold it this way, it's an epic adventure story, right? You hold it this way, it's a romantic comedy. You hold it this way, it's a tragic farce. Like, the fact that it works from almost every direction is part of why I think it's a work of art. But like, oh, believe me, it does not pull punches, this thing. I totally hear that. Like, it's not the candy version, definitely. Pardon? We don't know. So.
Hi. One time we shared a grilled cheese sandwich. I may not remember, but anyway.
I bet it was good. Was it good?
It was awesome. It was fun. We had a good time. It was at the MAPS conference.
Oh, yeah. Hi.
Anyway.
I do remember that. Yes, I do. I actually do. I actually do remember that.
I'm glad, because it was really a delight. It was a delight.
Yes,
yeah.
I do. We were talking. Yeah.
So, anyway, my question about
Thank you for that.
Yeah, you got it. Anytime. So, like with simulation theory, the thing that I get caught on is that we can generate lots of simulations, simulations within simulations, and simulations, and so on and so on and so on.
It's matrices all the way down.
It's covered in the Black Mirror.
Yeah.
You know, but there has to be an observer.
Right.
And so
here we jolly well are.
And I'm an observer, you're an observer, and so you need, and I don't think we're saying that observers can be simulated, right? You
I
said
don't
a
know.
trusting, oh wait. You said a trusting, like a child
Right.
could walk in and then be fooled and so on. But that child didn't come from the simulation, that child came from where? So that's the thing about simulation theory that gets me. I mean, like you said today, we have 10 billion on the server, it's a busy time, it's a great time, and I agree, that's true. But where all those little observers come from, and how does the observer, I mean, this could all be, you know, that's the thing that I still sort of like, and I don't know, have you read Bernard Kastrup yet? Because I always recommend him to people.
What's the
He's a philosopher in Europe, and he writes about, he falls under the category, I guess, of, he's a monastic idealist, he believes in one consciousness, but the way he describes
I think that could be, here with this
alters,
guy, you know, here's our heads talking to each other.
his alters, he talks about us as dissociated alters of one mind. And, you know, that makes a lot of sense to me, but you still have an observer. It has to be like, it has to be something, it's something to be like the Tea Faerie. It's many things to be like the Tea Faerie, but someone has to experience that. So how's that?
I really agree with you, and I agree with you that it's problematic and that it's interesting. I think that there's a bunch of potential solutions to that. I mean, in one sense, it you know, this thing is a construct. Witness our being here, you know, evolves observers from the inside. So then the question could be like, okay, well, what about all this space and time before observers evolved? Did that even happen? Or did it just theoretically happen as data, you know? There's reasons to think that you can kind of at least make amusing analogies about the observer. I know Heisenberg is spinning with unknowable momentum in his grave when we say this, right? But if you were going to make a simulation inside of a universe that's no larger than your simulation, you'd cut corners somewhere. It seems like they're not even rendering photons unless you look, right? This sort of thing. But it may be that there's our fans on the cosmic periscope, for instance, who may be observing, again, only in that case through our eyes. What about the part that nobody's looking at? I remember when I first heard, if a tree falls in a forest, you know, does it make a sound? I was like, oh my gosh, they paid these guys for this or whatever. Like, what kind of a silly philosophical thing was that when I was like third grade? Now I'm like, oh, that is a question, right? But it may be that there's an entity that, like I said, I think of ourselves as this guy. I'm going to set the microphone to show you. And the little fingertips are the hydra heads, and, you know, there's a tail brain down there somewhere. Like, I think ultimately there's one consciousness, at least of the DNA swarm on this planet, because, you know, you drop a piece of DNA or it evolves here or whatever, and it folds, and it, you know, it competes and it finds niches and eats itself and folds and competes and finds niches and sort of does the Ouroboros thing. And you come back in 100 million years and you see polar bears and poplar trees and ourselves, but it's just the gene swarm essentially. That thing was always not only one spirit but one creature in a certain sense. And so, sure, it could be that. What's upholding all of the stuff we don't see? Is a flea's perspective enough, or is it maybe, I don't know. And it may just be that there's the consciousness of the whole thing. I think this entire construct is itself sentient. There's an experience in which you experience that it is. I mean, that's the core of the 5-MeO thing. Oh, it's all one thing and it doesn't exist, and it is. It's not mirroring consciousness, rather the reverse. So, say, oh, you were all the way out. So were you unconscious? Kind of the opposite of that. And so that thing may be the thing that is the observer that is holding the entire situation together. I don't think it's sitting here going like, well, what's going to happen next? Yep, I'm an observer. Sure enough, look at those guys down there. But as a field of consciousness, like, that's my, candidate for what's upholding it.
Yeah, well, hey, anytime you want a cheese sandwich, grilled cheese, give me a call.
That was especially yummy. Was it like exploring psychedelics?
Yeah.
Was it Maps?
Yeah, it was Maps, yeah.
It was totally Maps. And you have questions, so raise your hand up. No, another one.
I have a question, a personal question. You're sort of a little bit of an advertisement for consumption, your lights are on.
The Tea Faerie is an object lesson, not a role model.
The question is, what kind of self-care do you sort of practice, and is there too much, and do you feel that you get beat up by
I mean, as I have the poster child for the digital scale. Self-care, sleeping is underrated, my friends. Eating is underrated. Like I said, I really have worked on that permeable membrane. I don't actually take a lot of psychedelics. You'd be surprised. It's about to be bicycle day, so I'm gonna definitely ride my bike around, and I hope you all do come out on the 19th Hippie Hill. And noonish, and we're gonna ride our bikes around. But you don't want to take so much acid in that situation that you can't ride a bike, right? I ride bikes twice a year on the playa and at bicycle day, and I'm always on drugs. I don't know if I can ride a bike sober. But I eat good food. My husband's wonderful. He gets kind veggie, organic. The CSA box comes, and so I keep the hardware more or less in good condition. And I love mostly. I love. If I didn't hold my chest closed like this all the time, just holding it dilated closed, I'd be doing nothing but weeping with gratitude. I wouldn't even be able to walk around if I didn't just hold that stuff tight. I am so grateful, and not in gratitude's manifesting for the past. By the way, you're eventually gonna have the feeling of yes and holding it, and it's timey-wimey. It's not like, oh, thank you for not smashing your anthill. It's just that you're eventually going to have the feeling of yes and the feeling of having it. If you're ever eventually going to have that, you're more likely to get it in the first place. But I'm so freaking grateful, and I'm so freaking in love with my friends, and I'm so in love with this universe, heartbreakingly, amazingly, overwhelming in love. And it's not that I don't know. I went to Haiti right after the earthquake, and I was helping kids make poi out of trash. People are, I was living with this woman who was the only one who got out of her class with 25 people. Seen shit that sucks, and I'm still crushingly overwhelmed by the beauty all the time. There is enough beauty in my crappy apartment to flat destroy me if I open myself up to it at any second, and I really, really feel that. And so just having that constant flow of love and beauty coming through my world. And I have a meditation practice that I do when I'm at home. I'm really good at it when I'm at home, and I sit in the bathtub at night, sort of on the way to sleep, and I call it meta, where it's first I love myself like my own baby. So much, so you could do no wrong, just so purely love yourself. And if it takes you the whole hour to get that, I guess you just need to try to do that for an hour, right? And then if you get it, then you can go on to whoever you got a stash with right now, whoever you're mad at. And you're just okay. It's not like Donald Trump every day. Somebody you're mad at personally, right? And then you're just once in a while, they took the whole hour, and I guess you had to do it, okay. And then as soon as you get through that, you get the candy. So you get to do your nestmates and your loves and the people you care about, your family, your partner, the people who inspire you, and just love them so much. Oh, that one's fun. Now it's starting to get fun. Now you're just feeling I feel so good to love them. It's so good, so good. And then when I get to communities, I love my Burning Man community, and I love my Rainbow community, I love my Zendo community, and I love my theater community, and I love and try to picture as many of them as you can, and sort of bigger and bigger, like people in jail, like kids in kindergarten, like old people, whatever, and just get as much as I can, so it's like yes. And some people will say it's not meditation because meditation you're trying to keep it really neutral, and you're trying not to have attraction, aversion, and I'm trying not to have aversion, but like I'm pretty much okay with attraction, like I'm pretty much okay with like the yes, this, as long as it doesn't discriminate, as long as it's yes, this, everything. And that's probably keeping my boat floating better than anything else.
I mean, it seems like yes and gratitude is I mean, that's essential. I mean, with it seems like that's.
And it's manifesting for the past, I'm telling you.
Mm-hmm. One more question? Yes.
So I guess I have a question about your audience, your telescope. I'm like,
Yeah.
in terms of like, so if you're working on increasing your interest in this or whatever, it seems like it's one thing to play to the other players, which is obviously interesting. But I mean, like, what are just kind of your thoughts on like secret stuff or stuff you do?
Well, this is the value of that thing. This is the value of that thing because
right.
this is what we lost when we had this sort of like, we lost this sort of classical idea of God, that thing of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead, where you've taken away the only thing that matters, the idea that someone is watching, right? Like, it gives you this idea that people are seeing the beautiful stuff that you do when nobody's watching. It's easy to like show off your guy in front of other people, and again, if it were the metaphor, and I don't believe any of this, like capital believe, it's just, it's the way that I live because it creates right action, right? But I don't disbelieve it, right? And it's easy to do that in front of other people, and as soon as you're behind their backs, don't even bother to do it. But if you have this idea that you have actual watchers all the time, it makes you do things elegantly. I'm washing the dishes elegantly, the least action, and I'm setting the thing down, and I put music on, and I say, hey, in the mirror in the morning, here we are. And I really think the value of that feeling of being watched is actually probably more useful to you when you're alone, because it makes all of the beautiful living seem worth it. And you say, look, is it art? If you're the only person who observed it, and let's say you're an amazing meditator, so even the memory trace is gone in 1 second, and the thing happened, and you're the only observer, and the memory trace didn't even stay. God damn it, yes it is art. I'm standing for yes it is. But it kind of helps you anchor it a little bit to just imagine that you have an audience sometimes.
Before we start to close down, we haven't touched at all on zero gravity.
Yeah, I'm doing a zero gravity dance performance. The parabolic arc plane, so the way it works is it's basically just falling out of the sky.
Nobody knows what that is.
Okay, so if you look up, this is a spacesuit from it. The Zero G Corporation is one of the ones that does it. And it's basically a 747 with all the seats taken out of it. And it goes up really, really high, and then it just falls out of the sky. And so it actually looks like a parabola because it's going forward already, right? And when it's falling, you have 30 seconds of zero gravity. People say, oh, it simulates zero gravity. It's like, no, it's the same thing as the space station. Zero gravity is it all falls together. And I just like it all falls together. But that thing is falling around the Earth. It's not that you're far enough away from the Earth that gravity is not pulling you anymore. It's that it's all falling at the same speed you are, right? And you ever been in the gravitron, like the thing that spins and sticks you to the wall? It doesn't feel like it's spinning if it's closed because there's people across from you are still across from you. If it's open, you get sick, right? This doesn't feel like it's dropping. It's totally closed. It just feels like you're in a room and you get lighter and lighter and lighter and lighter, and then you pick up and do flips and whatever, and then it gets heavier and heavier and heavier, and you're going to 2Gs when it's coming back up, right? And it's the most amazing feeling I've ever felt. That sensation of the gravitron sensation of 2Gs, it turns out that 0 to 1 is just as loud of a sensation as 1 to 2. But you've been tuning it out this entire time since you were born. And as soon as it comes off, you feel virtual. Like the sensation you think of as having a body is the sensation of 1G. And it's actually a really loud sensation over your whole body, but you've been tuning it out and you didn't realize it. Like when the generator goes off next door or the refrigerator, it's somewhat quiet in here. Oh, I didn't realize that loud sound was going this entire time. And you don't feel the feeling of going upside down because that's an inner ear thing. that has to do with which side gravity's on. So like this lady said, I'll pick, put your feet up and I'll spin you like a ball. If you close your eyes, you feel just taps. You don't feel like you're spinning. And I said, oh, I've got this one. I'm perfectly still. Take a beat. It's hard because you only have a few seconds. So you don't want to waste it. But take a beat. Open my eyes. Oh, and the plane was spinning around me. Like I'm perfectly still, and it was like the plane was spinning. I obsessed about this for my entire life. You know how people are like little girls who like start putting tablecloths on their head when they're 6 years old, and they're never gonna like their wedding because they've been obsessing about it this entire time. It's like an episode 1 effect thing. I obsessed about this for 30 years. I got it, and it was freaking perfect. And so we're gonna do a whole dance performance. We're gonna rent out the entire Russian jet, which is bigger and better. And we're gonna do this beautiful like star dance circus, like pre-choreographed thing in celebration of the 50th anniversary of the Apollo moon landings. And I'm really excited about it.
How do people tune into this? How do people find it?
Oh, okay, so their Instagram, I'm supposed to be the social media person, so maybe this is helping us here. They're not so thrilled about me being a psychedelic superhero associated with this thing because, like, maybe we might get some funding from NASA and stuff. I'm like, well. But you can look it up at giantleap.dance is the Instagram. Giant Leap Dance on Twitter, and there's a Facebook page, and there's all the links on there, and there will be updates as it comes out. It's not going to happen until October. It's not going to be the actual anniversary of the moon landing because, frankly, the thing we can release is the triumphant video, and that's going to take a lot of editing. It's not just like watching it live, it's going to be cutting it, which is, because with dance, usually you're doing something towards an audience out there. There's not a direction like that. Even in the round, it's different. We're going to have to put cameras all over the place, and then we're going to have to figure out how to cut it. So the triumphant video will come out like a couple months after the actual flight.
I like the idea of maybe like floating GoPros.
Yeah, well, they will whack you in the head, but like we'll definitely have them on ourselves, and we'll have them on all the corners of the thing. And the Stardance is one of my favorite psychedelic science fiction novels. Actually, my very favorite one. Spider Robinson is the author. And the first one, this girl goes to space to dance, and she's the only one who can communicate with the aliens when they arrive. And then the second one, what the aliens offer is in play, which is that you can join this telepathic community that can live in free space on air and sunlight. But you're a parent, and you don't die and stuff, but you're instantly, permanently telepathic with everybody who's already done it. And so you have to spend like 4 months at this place called Top Step, like playing a lot and praying a lot and taking a lot of psychedelics and telling a lot of your secrets. And because if you don't love yourself enough, you might die when you hit this thing, because a certain percentage of minds like crack on impact, and it's not the onslaught. It's not like all these minds hitting you. It's the fact that everybody you've ever known is going to know every unworthy, perverted thought you've ever had. And if you don't love yourself enough, you might crack when you hit it. So like you just have to sit out there in zero gravity and just learn to love yourself enough. Just to have the confidence. You're not going to be the first person ever rejected by the star mind. And that's pretty much how I feel about the after anything too, which is like, if you judge somebody, you're like, if you know something about somebody, this guy ripped his brother off, you might judge him. But like, if you lived every moment of their life from conception, you'd be like, oh my God, you had to be Hitler, it's over now. Like, come here. And if you just don't have that absolute confidence about yourself that like, you're worthy of love, because however you've been is a product of whatever you've gone through. And so anyway, I've been obsessed about these books since I was in my 20s, so the Stardance fantasy coming true makes me super, super excited.
Do people get nauseous?
Yeah, well, some people do. I get, if I read the lyrics to one song in a car, like, it's over for me, right? And so I just pretty much pray to my body, like, please, body, please, I want this one thing. Like, I've been nauseous, like, all these times. I just want to get this one, not having that happen, and I didn't get nauseous at all. It does happen. In the flight I was on, it didn't happen to anybody. But it could.
How many parabolas what do you do?
It does like 20. It's like the one I was on does like 20 tries of 25 seconds. I think that they can talk the Russian jet into doing more of them for some reason. They're like a little bit looser about a few things. They took away my 5-MeO DMT pen when I. So the first one.
The Russians got your pen?
No, not the Russians. These guys. I didn't have my government issued ID, and they didn't like the look on my face, I think, so they went through all my pockets. And it looked like it was empty in the first place. So it's not like I got in trouble for drugs. But what the bit would have been is, you don't do it on the first round because then they'll duct tape you to the wall if they figure it out, obviously. But like on the last round anyway, when you go down for 2 Gs, and you wanted to see if you could blow up a balloon in 2 Gs. You can, I looked. So now there's no smoke in the plane. And then you got 2 chances to tie the knot. And then you're that kid. But that's not what happened that time. And maybe 80 mics, who knows.
What was the name of those books?
Stardance by Spider Robinson. Bye.
Closing thoughts?
Closing close. To those who weren't as lucky, I usually make my alternate selves. Carpe Awesome. Excelsior. It's that ever higher. Stanley said Excelsior. Oh, and Mr. Rak, do you have closing sentiments?
I
Universe?
happen to have some closing sentiments.
Marvelous.
Here, you'd be marvelous for me.
This was actually written by the Tea Faerie. Just imagine her beautiful voice saying it.
I want to hear yours.
To those who have gone before, to the explorers of the last great sea, true heroes all, sink or swim. To the self-elect, shamans, adventurers, visionaries, and madmen alike. To the courageous and to the curious. To the persecuted and to the lost. To all of the exiles who have dared to climb the garden wall. To the holy fools, the seekers, the ambassadors, and the pioneers. To those who have had the temerity to storm heaven and hell, and who have returned with the sacred fire to light our way. To those who can never remember, and to those who can never forget. To all of the intrepid and extraordinary spirits who have played at the edge, we who prepare to confront the mystery, salute you.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Tea Faerie. And another round of applause for Rak.